Welcome back, traders and investors. We have a very special guest on today, Turney Duff, author of The Buy Side. Turney, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. So, just real quickly, just your market and education background, and how did you end up on Wall Street?
I showed up in the city in 1994 with a giant U-Haul and a lobster on it that said "America moves from Maine," and I had my journalism degree under my arm, and walked right into Sports Illustrated and said to the security guard, "I'm like, oh, I want to drop off my resume and meet some people." And the guy looked at me like I was crazy, and he's like, "Mail it." So after failing to secure a job in PR or magazine or newspaper place, I called my mom and said, I'm struggling. I need to find a job. And she's like, "Why don't you call your uncle?" So called up my uncle and wasn't even really sure what I was saying, and he just said, "I'll call you back in 10 minutes." And next thing you know, I have an interview with Lehman Brothers, and I walk into the trading floor right around 9:30, and I was just blown away. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I wanted in, and then I sort of tried to navigate my way, and eventually got a job in private client services at Morgan Stanley.
So you wanted to be part of that crazy trading action that you saw at 9:30. That's what got you there, eh, Turney?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and you guys know the difference between 9:30, let's say in 1994, and today is, it's night and day because, there was no instant message, there wasn't an internet. I mean, it was guys with two phones in their hands and screaming and paper flying, and it was really intense.
When you hear that ding, 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 when that bell actually goes at 9:30, it's like just gets your heart racing. Yeah, exactly. That intensity
Yeah.
is what
And
got
and
you.
it, and it was the people too, because I was looking around and young 20s. I'm seeing guys in their late 20s, early 30s. They're dressed really well. They command a ton of respect, and it was just like, yeah, this is where I want to be.
So you've wrote this book, The Buy Side, and you talk about, obviously, you're going to talk about, traders, and you're talking about, spectacular excess in this book. But just explain to our listeners here, because we got some newer listeners, the difference between the buy side and the sell side.
Sure. I mean, in the simplest terms, the buy side is just the client. So it could be a hedge fund, a mutual fund. It could be a guy sitting in his underwear, at his computer. So the buy side can buy or sell. They're just the client, and the sell side is your guy at Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs or wherever, and he's just facilitating the orders, providing research and customer facilitation, and so the buy side is the client, and the sell side is the guy who's trying to get his orders.
And you've kind of worked on both sides, correct, Turney?
Yeah, my first 5 years was at Morgan Stanley in private client, and we were dealing with high net worth individuals and small institutions, and I sort of learned the business a little, those first 5 years, and then due to my sort of networking and going out after work, I ended up getting a call to go interview over at a hedge fund called the Galleon Group,
Oh.
and at the time I didn't even really know what a hedge fund was. This is 1999. I should have known, but I didn't. And they said, come on over, and I was like, all right, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and wow, like did I learn quickly once I got over there.
Yeah, tell us about your experiences at Galleon and being on that side of the business here. It was a big learning curve, huh?
Oh, it was huge. And one of the things people often want to talk about, when they find out that I worked at Galleon and or at a hedge fund, and was the whole sort of like insider trading racket, and you know early on I learned that on the buy side, especially in 1999, 2000, it was all about getting edge, getting information, um, being able to put together a trade and to make money, and that was bottom line. And I've often likened it to the steroid era in Major League Baseball. That period, the early 2000s, um, it was kind of the Wild West. We didn't feel like there were any consequences to getting a wink or a nod or getting really good information to put on the books. But I got there at Galleon, and we were about 600 million, and 2 years later we were managing $5 billion.
Wow.
And yeah, it was insane.
So talk about
But,
those like edges. Like, is that just like, knowing people, and like how do you get those edges?
well, so yeah, I mean, as I said before, I was a journalism major, from Ohio University. I'm a B student. I have a 970 SAT, and during the day, I'm sitting next to a guy from Stanford, a guy from Harvard, a woman from Duke, and so clearly during the day I was out connected, out experienced and out degreed. And what I figured out was, when the office lights go out, that was sort of my time to shine. So, I was always at happy hour. I was always, out wining and dining. And when you're at on the buy side, a big part of business is entertaining. And so, I was constantly meeting new people and constantly sort of trying to develop and cultivate new contacts. And one thing that I learned was, it's like planting seeds. You plant them everywhere. You don't know what's going to grow and bear fruit, but the more that you do that, the more that it's going to come back to you. And so I just sort of played good cop on a desk that had 5 or 6 bad cops, and that worked really, really well for me. And at night I just tried to develop the best relationships I could. And it turned out, I would have a guy who was phenomenal at technical analysis, and so he was my guy. And then I would have another guy who knew all of the rumors in the drug stocks. And so I just kind of found good, smart people who could help me sort of, prolong my career.
So it was all about information for you then, like gathering all these contacts with information, and use that to formulate obviously your next trade or trading idea.
Yeah, and I think part of it was that, like, I realized I knew nothing, and that was probably the smartest I'd ever felt, and so I aligned myself with good, smart people, rather than kind of having this ego or thinking I'm smarter than everyone else, and that really benefited me.
Okay, so looking on the sell side, I mean, obviously the information is critical, but how much attention do they pay to the charts? We talk a lot about the technicals and everything, and even if you get information, you have to formulate a plan. How much attention is paid to the technicals?
Wait, to the technicals?
Yeah.
It's called what? The mosaic theory of investing. It for some guys it would be 20-30% of their final decision. For me, it was less so. It would be like the number 9 or number 10, reason why I would buy or sell a stock. So for every guy, it's completely different. I worked with a guy at Galleon who literally that's the only way he traded, and he just had levels, and so he would have 50, 60 orders out there at a time, and if they hit his levels, then he was either buying or selling. So, every guy is different.
So you've got to kind of develop your own strategy. But you were talking, so technicals would be like 8, 9 down. What are the other ones? Like, are there some other, ones that you can share with us, like reasons for entering the trade, like your top 3 reasons back then?
Sure.
Like, obviously information was one of them, but
yeah, one thing that I really like to do was, and people look at like sort of slow days on Wall Street as sort of like a waste of time, and to me it was the most valuable day, because I could go into an analyst or a portfolio manager's office, and we could just talk crap and talk about stocks, talk about the market. And so like a portfolio manager might say to me, hey, if Apple ever got back to 550, I would back up the truck because of, X, Y, and Z. And I would go back to my desk and I would write that down. And sure enough, 3 months later, the stock's, trading down with the market. It's trading at 550. I go into the portfolio manager's office and I say, hey, you said this, and we'd back up the truck because of X, Y, and Z. Has that changed? And he would say, no, but and all of a sudden fear would enter into his trading, psyche, and he wouldn't want to pull the trigger. And so, not that this is number one, but I used to try to take emotion completely out of it, and
Right.
I could get guys to tell me something when they weren't staring at the screens and weren't, having an emotional attachment to, the blood dripping off of, all of the red stocks on the screen. I would pull the trigger. And then like another thing that was really good for me was I knew everyone's sort of tendencies or weaknesses in the market. So I had a biotech analyst who, she was great. She had great information. She knew what she was talking about, and she would come running out to my desk and say, "Turney, Biogen's down, another 2 points today. Oh my God, we have to sell. And I would say, "Has anything changed?" And she would say, "No, but it keeps going down. We have to sell." And I knew just from working with her over the years that her threshold for pain was a buy signal. And then we had another guy in the office who was the most valuable guy in the office because he was always wrong. And I was like, "This is
Nice.
gold." And my portfolio manager's like, he's like, we got to let him go. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I'm like, "This guy's he's perfect." I'm like, whenever he tells us to do something, we do the opposite. And and then I would have another analyst who, he was phenomenal, but he didn't have a pair. So he would go to my desk and say, "Hey, Turney, let's buy 25,000 shares of Medtronics," and I'd kind of like dig it out of him, like, what do you know? And so I'm buying 100 when he tells me to buy 25. So I use the other people in my office and their tendencies to sort of figure out, because people keep making the same mistakes, and if a guy's making the same mistake, I can use that to my benefit. Because
for sure.
Because so and it's not my method is not normal or standard, but I think I really sort of factored in emotion and people's tendencies and the people around me to make the most money that I could.
Okay.
I mean, I use, a similar strategy now is I actually look at Twitter and I look at stock twits a lot of times, and they can be great contrarian indicators just for that same reason. You'll get people talking about the trade. And if you get like 9 out of 10 people that are bullish that stock and sitting over there's a pretty good chance that every short-term guy that wants to be in is already in, and this thing could be ready for a reverse. So it's kind of like that same thing that was on the floor back in the day when you had the guy, that was making the loser trades all the time. That still exists. That information still exists here. It's just in different forms.
Yep.
We get a question here in the chat about the White House and the business that that went on there. If you care to discuss.
Yeah, sure. As I said, entertaining is a huge part of Wall Street. Is a huge part of business, and there was several years while I was on the buy side where there was a location called the White House, where a couple of guys from the sell side, would provide the drugs and the booze and the women, and it was just sort of a place where buy side guys could stop by any time of day, and do what they need to do. Very often you'd get the married guy who didn't want to go home and change a diaper or whatever, and they'd be there right at 4:05 and hang out till 7 or 8 until they had to catch a train. But it was just sort of a party spot. Some of those places still exist. Some are a little bit more elegant than others. So it was just sort of a place to go. One of the big things now in New York is these rotating sort of underground strip clubs. You need to get a secret text message or password to where the location is, and the reasons guys on Wall Street love these places is because you can run your credit card through and it just says like Joe's Pub or something.
Right.
Like it doesn't. But yeah, I mean, it was part of it. The White House was filled with cocaine,
Wow.
escorts, and you name it, and there were no rules, and you could come and go as you please.
That's unbelievable. So that's a shot. But Turney, so why did just bring you back into your book? Why did you write the book? Like, what was your goals when you came out to write this book on all this stuff?
Well, I was coming out of my second drug and alcohol rehab. I've been sober for 4.5 years now, and I knew I didn't want to go back to Wall Street. I ended up getting a job offer at, basically a job offer at a hedge fund called Pioneer Path, and I was sitting there, and I just knew it wasn't right. And I'm not saying anything bad about Wall Street. It wasn't for me, and I knew if I went back, I would be going just for the money, and so I ended up sabotaging that interview and sort of walking away and just trying to figure out what am I going to do, and I just began to write, and it really helped with my sobriety, and just putting the words on the page, and so it was very therapeutic, and once I kind of started letting people read it, they're like, you got something here, like you should do something with this. So that's why I pursued publishing it.
And the theme, I mean, obviously, we all know what went on at Galleon and insider trading. I mean, does that still go on now? I mean, to some degree. I mean, where have they been able to crack down on it? Are there still leaks? Are there still things going on? Or, in your opinion, have they, is Wall Street cleaned up his act?
Yeah. I mean, I still have a full Rolodex, and I still talk to guys all the time. And obviously this is just my opinion, but yes, some of it still goes on. It's sort of like I said, like the steroid era in baseball. As soon as they figure out how to catch them, they come up with a new method. But what I would say is, there are consequences now. So if you're a 29-year-old guy sitting at a hedge fund, and your boss is doing stuff that kind of looks suspicious, you're going to think twice, because we've all seen the perp walks. It's not like 10 years ago where we felt like you weren't going to get caught and you weren't going to get in trouble. So I think the more negative publicity that comes out and negative news, and the more people that get arrested, I believe that is definitely slowed, because it's not worth it anymore.
Turney,
let's say, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, the last thing I was just going to say was, so, and there's an anecdote in my book where it's kind of the first time that I sort of acted on inside information, and I tell this anecdote of where this guy who's whispering into the phone tells me that Jeffries is going to upgrade Amazon in 6 minutes, and I ended up buying 100,000 shares, and went up $5 immediately. We made $500,000.
Wow.
But if you do the math, so the Galleon was going to take 20% of the profit. So all right, so boom, you're down to $100,000, right? Well, part of my bonus, I'm probably getting $10,000 or $15,000 of that $100,000. So, is that worth going to jail for? No.
Yeah, you want to be the big money if you're going to go to jail. So,
yeah, exactly.
Okay, Turney, I've got to ask you this. Obviously, it's been the talk here ever since Michael Lewis wrote the book Flash Boys here, and he came out on 60 Minutes and he said, that the markets are rigged. What are your thoughts here on this current market, like on high-frequency trading? Do you feel like, the markets are rigged here against the little guy, and the high-frequency traders have all this new inside information now? Or do you think that's just, not true?
I wrote a piece for CNBC right after that 60 Minutes. And to me, saying the markets are rigged, that's a little aggressive. That's not the right word. But we knew somebody was stealing from us. We just didn't, we didn't put it together like Michael Lewis did. So, when I would put an order down there, to buy 100,000 shares or something, and see it tick up, in my face, and then, I'm buying it a nickel higher or whatever it is. We knew someone was stealing. So, people definitely have their hand in the cookie jar. But saying that the market is rigged, I think is going a little too far.
Okay, we've had Turney Duff on, author of The Buy Side, a New York Times bestseller. He's currently working on a second book, and I guess Sony is buying the rights to the first book. It might turn it into a movie or TV show. Turney, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you.
I know
Hey,
everyone.
I have one question for you guys.
Okay.
So I at the beginning of the season, I took the Cubs over 70 wins, and it does not feel very good right now. Do I have a shot?
Oh man. And how many do they have now?
Like 15 or 16. It's not looking good.
No, maybe I don't know. I think that they're in trouble. Their pitching is weak, and that Theo Epstein that they were supposed to bring over to clean up
I
things
know.
is not doing a very good job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh well.
All right. Go to Wrigley Field in the afternoon and get some hot dogs and forget about it. But
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks,
We'd like to
Turney.
have you on again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great day.